First, the nomination demonstrates how international award institutions are reconfiguring their understanding of global music. For many years, such award bodies were often criticized for their Western-centric lens, rarely spotlighting non-English music unless it fell under niche or world music categories. The fact that Jungkook's name appears in an international nomination list shows a deliberate shift in evaluation systems. It signals that these institutions now recognize commercial success, cultural impact, and artistic value regardless of language or origin. Jungkook's rise is not an isolated case. It is part of a larger trend where music in languages outside English, whether it is Spanish, Korean, or Portuguese, has broken into global mainstream consumption. However, Jungkook's recognition is particularly noteworthy because it connects to his identity as part of BTS, a group that already disrupted the industry norms, and now, as an individual continuing to command attention on his own merit. Second, Jungkook's nomination provides evidence of how audiences worldwide have embraced K-pop as more than a passing trend. Over the past decade, K-pop has been positioned in global conversations as both a cultural export and a powerful commercial entity. The genre's popularity cannot be measured simply by YouTube views, album sales, or social media mentions. Instead, it is seen through the systemic changes in how global entertainment companies and streaming platforms integrate Korean acts into their ecosystems. Jungkook's nomination further validates that K-pop artists are not only capable of competing in Asian markets or among fandom-driven metrics, but are also capable of achieving recognition at award platforms that have historically been dominated by Western names. For industry observers, this moment serves as a marker of maturity for K-pop as a global genre. No longer confined to niche communities, it is now part of the broader fabric of international music appreciation. Third, one cannot ignore the role of streaming culture and global connectivity in bringing Jungkook to this point. Digital platforms have collapsed geographical barriers, creating equal opportunities for artists from diverse backgrounds to reach global audiences. Jungkook's consistent performance on streaming services, his dominance across multiple charts, and his viral moments on platforms like TikTok all illustrate how his music resonates universally. However, the nomination represents something beyond numbers. It is a recognition from traditional institutions which often take years to adjust to industry shifts. This juxtaposition between immediate digital popularity and long-term institutional acknowledgement is what makes Jungkook's nomination so critical. It shows that the digital-first generation of artists can now transform short-term success into long-term recognition. The fourth layer to consider is how Jungkook's image and artistry extend beyond music alone. For international award committees, nominations are not solely based on chart performance or sales. They also factor in cultural influence, representation, and the ability to shape trends. Jungkook has been central to discussions about global fashion partnerships, youth influence, and cross-cultural connectivity. His collaboration with globally recognized brands has positioned him not just as a musician, but as a cultural figure whose visibility transcends the stage. This holistic influence strengthens the case for why his nomination carries significance. It is not simply a matter of rewarding one song or one album, but acknowledging a person who represents a larger shift in how the world consumes culture. Fifth, Jungkook's nomination is also emblematic of the shifting balance between collective success and individual achievement in global entertainment. As part of BTS, Jungkook contributed to milestones that reshaped music history, stadium tours across continents, record-breaking album sales, and recognition at platforms like the United Nations. However, his individual nomination highlights how members of globally renowned groups can carve out their own space without relying entirely on the group's identity. For international award bodies, this creates a new dimension of evaluation, the ability to recognize not just collective brands, but also individual artistry within them. Jungkook's success here provides a blueprint for how future K-pop idols, or members of international groups, might navigate their careers while balancing group loyalty with solo recognition. Another critical perspective is the way such nominations contribute to soft power and national branding. South Korea has long invested in its cultural exports under the framework of the Korean Wave, Hallyu, with music, dramas, and films serving as pillars of national influence abroad. Jungkook's international nomination fits neatly into this narrative, reinforcing South Korea's position as a leading cultural exporter. For policymakers, industry strategists, and academics analyzing cultural diplomacy, his nomination is not simply about music, it is about how one individual can embody the success of a country's cultural strategy on the world stage. This interconnection between cultural identity and individual achievement adds weight to why Jungkook's nomination is seen as extraordinary. At the same time, one must recognize that international award nominations often face skepticism regarding their legitimacy or inclusivity. In this context, Jungkook's presence on the nomination list invites discussions about how these institutions adapt to public demand and cultural realities. If traditional award bodies are willing to recognize Jungkook, it is not only a reflection of his influence, but also of the evolving metrics by which these awards seek relevance. Industry experts often argue that awards are not only about honoring excellence, but also about maintaining relevance in the eyes of audiences. Jungkook's nomination, therefore, serves both purposes. It honors his work and helps the award institution align itself with contemporary global cultural currents. Equally important is how this moment influences industry peers. For other non-Western artists, Jungkook's nomination becomes a case study, proving that it is possible to gain recognition beyond regional achievements. It provides both inspiration and practical evidence that global markets are open to diverse voices, provided there is a combination of talent, strategic positioning, and cultural momentum. The ripple effect of his nomination could lead to broader diversification of nominees in the future, thereby reshaping the global awards landscape into a more inclusive arena. Lastly, Jungkook's nomination cannot be separated from the fan-driven culture that has supported him throughout his career. While award institutions often position themselves as independent evaluators of artistry, the reality is that audience engagement heavily influences visibility. Jungkook's fanbase, spread across continents, has consistently amplified his presence in conversations, campaigns, and cultural moments. However, the key distinction here is that the nomination acknowledges not just the power of fandom, but also the quality of artistry. This dual validation, both from grassroots support and from institutional acknowledgement, is what makes his achievement exceptional. In summary, Jungkook's nomination for a prestigious international award is extraordinary because it encapsulates multiple layers of global change. It reflects the evolution of international award bodies, the normalization of K-pop as a central genre in global music, the influence of digital streaming culture, the crossover of artistry and cultural impact, and the balance between collective and individual success. It also reinforces South Korea's cultural soft power, challenges traditional award structures, and sets a precedent for future non-Western artists. By viewing this nomination through these interconnected lenses, one can understand why it is not just another recognition, but a marker of cultural and industry transformation. Jungkook's nomination brings into focus the growing recognition of hybrid identities in global entertainment. He is simultaneously a global pop star, a Korean cultural icon, and a representative of a highly structured idol system. Rather than being confined to one identity, he navigates all of them successfully, making him relatable to different audiences for different reasons. For award institutions, acknowledging such a figure demonstrates a willingness to embrace hybrid forms of artistry that do not neatly fit into old categorizations. This shift has significant implications for how future idols will be received globally. They no longer need to conform to a singular narrative, but can embrace the multiplicity of their identities. This moment also underlines the evolving power dynamics between audiences, artists, and institutions. Idols like Jungkook often cultivate intensely loyal fan communities that play a significant role in amplifying their visibility. Yet, by nominating him, international institutions acknowledge that his influence cannot be explained away solely by fan-driven popularity. It acknowledges that there is artistry, cultural impact, and industry significance worthy of institutional recognition. This demonstrates a recalibration in how institutions balance audience influence with their own evaluation systems. Jungkook's nomination shows that idols can no longer be dismissed as products of fandom alone. They are forces reshaping global cultural landscapes. Jungkook's individual recognition highlights the ongoing discussion around individuality within idol culture. For decades, idols were perceived more as collective performers within groups, with individual identities often subsumed under the group brand. However, the global entertainment industry increasingly values individual distinctiveness. Jungkook's ability to achieve a nomination independent of BTS highlights how idols can now navigate both collective and individual success. This not only redefines the role of idols, but also changes the strategies agencies and artists may pursue in the future. The model is no longer just about building group synergy, but also about cultivating individual artistry capable of standing on its own. Another important angle is the cultural symbolism attached to this recognition. Jungkook's nomination represents the globalization of the idol model itself. The idol system, once seen as uniquely Korean or Japanese, is now influencing global entertainment structures. Training systems, performance standards, and fan engagement strategies pioneered in K-pop are increasingly being studied and adapted elsewhere. By nominating Jungkook, international award institutions indirectly validate the effectiveness of this system, signaling that its products are not only viable in local markets, but also competitive on the global stage. This creates an intriguing dynamic. The idol model, once criticized for being formulaic, is now producing individuals recognized at the highest levels of global culture. Moreover, Jungkook's nomination reframes the conversation about longevity in idol careers. Historically, idols were often seen as having limited career spans, tied to youthful images or shifting fan interests. International recognition, however, positions Jungkook within a different narrative, that of long-term artistry and sustained cultural impact. If institutions are willing to nominate idols, it means they see potential for continued relevance, not just short-term popularity. This redefines what it means to be an idol, not a fleeting cultural product, but a lasting contributor to the arts. Finally, this recognition also reshapes the global perception of idols as cultural leaders. Jungkook is not just a performer. He is seen as someone capable of setting trends, influencing industries beyond music and representing generational aspirations. His nomination reflects this leadership role. It signals that idols are no longer peripheral figures, but central to the ongoing evolution of global culture. For the next generation of artists, Jungkook's achievement becomes both a benchmark and a new definition of what it means to succeed internationally.